Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the Compassionate, the Merciful. My paper is about the way we can avoid misuse of religion, especially when it comes to avoiding violence and extremism. Unfortunately, a sad reality that we have been witnessing in many times in history, and especially right now in our age, is misuse of the name of religion. Many tragic events and atrocities have been carried out in the name of religion. And this has led to bad results. I mentioned here 3 bad results. One is, first of all, a damage which has been caused to humanity. Many innocent people have been killed or have been denied their rights in the name of religion. So this has affected lives of people. This has also caused a kind of false image and understanding of religion. And the third thing is, it has given an excuse to some people who are against religion as a whole to say, look, religion is the source of troubles, and religious people, because they cannot get along with each other, or they have no respect for those who are not religious, then they are the cause of all the problems. So let's get rid of all of the religions and anything which is sacred. So this is the kind of argument that we hear, or sometimes they don't say it expressly, but it's deep in the mind of some people who work for the liberalism and secularism in its very radical way. So I have made few points here. One is that, first of all, as we know, of course this is obvious for us, but maybe we need to highlight this for some people, is that it's not true that the greatest tragedies of the world have happened because of religion. If you look at, for example, the great wars of the 20th century, the First World War, the Second World War, it has nothing to do with religion. And also, it's very unfair to deny all the beautiful things that religions have been doing and religious people have been doing. And also, there is a false argument here that if something has been misused, so it means that we have to get rid of the whole thing. In particular, I have mentioned 2 examples. For example, we know that in many courts and judiciary systems in the world, throughout the history, injustice has been taking place. I don't think even in one single country you can say that all the decisions made in the courts, all the sentences, issued in the courts are just. There have been many misuse and injustice taking place. But no one would still doubt that we need to have courts and judiciary systems. Or, for example, something which is more obvious, about army, military, and weapons. Maybe greatest majority of the uses of army and weapons have been not for good reasons, at least in one side. But still, no one denies that we need to have a way to defend ourselves. We need to have armies. We spend lots of money, maybe more than necessary, but still the principle is there that we need to have army, and we need to be able to use weapons when needed. So misuse of something does not mean that we have to get rid of the whole thing. But still, as religious people, we cannot take this issue easily. We have to take it seriously, because some people are not that sophisticated in their judgment. So when they see some problems coming from some religious people, then they think that there must be a problem in the religion. So in my paper, I have tried to investigate what are the instruments and what is the mechanism in Islam, especially in Shia Islam, that can help us in avoiding misuse of religion, especially by extremism and use of violence. First, I wanted to refer to a Quranic verse which is very important about getting a general image and picture of human life. Because some of you know Arabic, so maybe I should read it also in Arabic. God says, إِنَّا عَرَضْنَا الْأَمَانَةَ عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ فَأَبَيْنَ أَنْ يَحْمِلْنَهَا وَأَشْفَقْنَ مِنْهَا وَحَمَلْهَا الْإِنسَانِ. We presented the trust to the mountains, to the skies, to the earth, but they all were afraid of accepting this trust and they refused. Not as a kind of rebellion, as a kind of declaration that they cannot cope with it. But human beings have accepted the trust. وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانِ. But إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. But man was very unjust and very ignorant. So it shows that the way that we have dealt with this great trust of God, which is to act as agents for God, as vicegerents for God, as Khalifatullah, unfortunately, we have been showing and exhibiting injustice and ignorance. So these are two major roots of all the problems. And now, in my paper, I try to say how we can avoid this ignorance and injustice, especially when they take place among the religious people and in religious circles, and how the people who misuse the name of religion and do mischief, they are actually doing this out of ignorance and injustice. A very important aspect of any religious practice and exercise, especially when it comes to socio-political arena, is to avoid ignorance. Unfortunately, what we see in some religious circles, and Islam is included, is that some people, without having proper training, proper education, they give themselves the right to judge and to express their opinion as an Islamic opinion. Sometimes, imam of a mosque, without having proper training, gives fatwa easily in some traditions. And this is very dangerous. In Shia Islam, what we have in place is a very long process of training. Whenever I talk about the Shiite seminaries and the way of education there, I say to my friends that for us studying 5-6 years is just to warm up. 5-6 years, nothing. A good scholar at least has studied 15-20 years non-stop. And this is so important for us that without having at least 15-20 years of study, we don't allow ourselves to make any personal, a kind of interpretation or comment about anything. And in the Shiite tradition, as you know, when it comes to things that relate to practical rulings of Islam, we are still more strict. So you may be a great scholar by yourself. Maybe you have studied 20-30 years, for example, philosophy, theology, mysticism. But when it comes to practical rulings, we only follow the most knowledgeable and the most pious scholars of our age, which is only few people. So it's not that a person in, a mosque or even a chief imam of a town can issue, fatwas or can, say to people, what do they do. We need to refer to grand ayatollahs who have spent all their life on studying, on piety, and they have the wisdom of leading the community. So this has saved the Shia community from many problems that are unfortunately seen in some traditions. And the other thing is that in the Shiite tradition, we have something that I think is very important, and I call sometimes this our version of Trinity. So this is something that I have been reflecting on when I was writing my book, Shia Islam, Origins, Faith and Practices, and it was published in 2001. I put a chapter on this, that there are three things together, they can make miracles. I think this is for Shia Islam, but this can be for any religion. And that is combination of rationality and spirituality and search for justice. When you have these three together, then this helps from going to one side to go to extremes, or from being a person who is only concerned about justice but not about the spirituality, or only about the spirituality and not about justice, or working for justice but not with rationality. When you have these three together, it gives you a special balance. I remember in 2004, I went to airport in Tehran, Imam Khomeini airport. Some of you have been landing and departing from that airport, to receive 4 Catholic friends coming from the UK. And it was midnight. Normally the flights come, early morning from Europe. So one of my friends from Heathrow College, Bonnie might know Michael Barnes. So he asked me, what is the difference between Sunni Islam and Shia Islam? So I said, how can I answer this question, briefly, and also something that can do justice? So I decided, instead of talking about, for example, we differ on the issue of the successorship or other things, I said, in my understanding, there are 3 things that you can find in every aspect of Shia Islam. And that is what makes us distinct. And that is the combination of rationality and spirituality and search for justice. Then, many times after that, I saw Michael, and he told me, I'm thinking about that 3 things. And the last time I saw him was in American Academy of Religion, and he said, I'm writing a book, 1 chapter is about that combination. And a few years ago, maybe 3-4 years ago, also our supreme leader, when he was talking in the anniversary of Imam Khomeini, he talked about these 3 things. And it was interesting for me because these are not mentioned in any books. And my book was published in English and not available in Farsi. But it was important for me that also this kind of understanding of these 3 have been recognized by our supreme leader. He talked about Imam Khomeini, but I talked about the Shia in general. So anyway, these 3 things are very important. And I try to explain a little bit each, and then I would finish my talk. Rationality. Rationality is very important. Unfortunately, for some religious people, again, some Muslims included, reason or intellect is not a main thing. Even if they have a role for reason, it's just to bring them to religion. But when you come to religion, when you have access to the scriptures and revelation, then they think that we don't need to use reason that much. One of our living scholars has a beautiful analogy here. He says that for some people, reason or intellect or aql is just a key. With key, you unlock the door, you get into the room, but you no longer need the key. So for some people, reason is to bring them to religion. You prove the existence of God, you verify the truth of the claim of the Prophet, but then when you come to religion and you want to understand Quran or Bible, you don't need intellect, you just follow the scripture. But this is not correct. We need also to use aql or intellect even when we are in the room. when we are in religion. So the example is the example of a torch, a light that helps you to find the door and open the door, and then even being inside the room, you need that light. But of course, when you come to the room of religion, you have this light supplemented by the light of guidance coming in the form of revelation. But you need to have both. In Shia Islam, we have reason as one of our sources for understanding even our jurisprudential laws, which is very important. So in our fiqh, in addition to the book and the sunnah, we have aql. And this is very important for us. If there is any decisive judgment made by the intellect, it is religiously accepted, not just we say, okay, we keep silent, or for example, we respect it. It's a religious ruling. We have a rule in our jurisprudence known as the rule of correlation, قاعدة الملازمة. كلما حكم به العقل حكم به الشرع وكلما حكم به الشرع حكم به العقل. Whatever judgment is made by reason, the same is made by religion, and vice versa. So reason is very, very important. There has been a debate among Muslim theologians about the role of reason, for example, in morality. Again, here the Shia and some Sunnites like Mu'tazilites had the idea that we have the ability to use our reason to understand the basic norms of morality. So we don't need to be religious so that we understand that, for example, telling truth is good. But Ash'arites, had a kind of divine command theory, and they had the idea that something becomes good when God says it is good, without being there any prior independent criteria for goodness and badness. So in ethics, in jurisprudence, in every aspect, we try to be rational. And you know that the Shiites have always had interest in philosophy. And those who are, working in the field of tarajim, biographies, sometimes they wonder whether a person is a Shia or Sunni, because there were times that this was not clearly identified. So one of the evidence that they use is if that person had interest in philosophy, they say it's more likely that he was a Shia. Now in Iran, in every small town, if there is a university, there is a department of philosophy. But in some places, you don't find even one single department of philosophy in the entire country. So the interest in intellectual sciences, in manifestation of this interest in rationality, I have here some quotations from our Imams. In a very beautiful saying from our seventh Imam, Imam Kazim alayhi salam, who is buried in Kazimain in Baghdad, he makes a special remark about reason. And he says, the most perfect, the best people in the sight of God are the most rational ones. Those who are better in their intellectual capacity and using that. So rationality is one side. The other side is spirituality. Spirituality is very important for us, and we think that although rituals are important, but we should go beyond the rituals and grasp the spirit of the rituals. For example, daily prayers are very important, but it shouldn't be done just as a routine, as a rite, without feeling the presence of God in your prayer. So we have great emphasis on spirituality, on mysticism, on irfan. And to make it very brief, I have mentioned here some aspects of this spirituality. And in particular, I have referred to the special position that prayer and supplication have in Shia Islam. We have rich treasure of supplications. For example, we have As-Sahifatu Sajjadiyya, which is translated in English as the Psalms of Islam, a collection of some 50 prayers by Imam Zainul Abidin, in most difficult time in the history of Islam, which was after the brutal killing of Imam Hussein, Imam Zainul Abidin made these du'as and supplications about different aspects of life. We have, for example, whispered prayers of Imam Zainul Abidin, 15 whispered prayers. For example, Munajatul Ta'ibin, Munajatul Shakin, Munajatul Muftaqirin, Munajatul Muridin, the whispered prayers of the people who complain about their own internal problems. The whispered prayers of the lovers of God, the people who are feeling poverty. So we have the Munajat of Sha'baniyah, which is a masterpiece on spirituality, which ends with some remarkable sentences like Ilahi alhaqni binur izzaka al-abhaj fa'akuna laka arifa wa an siwaka munharifa wa minka khaifan muraqiba ya dhal jalali wal ikram. O God, let me join the light of your dignity, which is the most joyful thing. And please make me enabled to detach myself from anything other than you and just be focused and attached to you. We have Dua Arafah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, which is a very profound dua, and Imam said this just in one incident when they were in Arafah, the plain of Arafah. So these du'as normally were coming without any preparation. So just, Imam was with some people and started prayer, but it is about 40, 50 pages, this prayer that we try to recite on the 9th of Dhul Hajjah. So manifestation of spirituality takes different form, but one is supplication. The third is search for justice. Unfortunately, there is a great possibility that when you become very interested in spirituality, then you don't bother that much about what is happening in society. You can very much enjoy your beautiful moments of prayer and connection to God. Then you don't bother about, what is happening in the society. It is said that once one of the, we call them Sufis, or, it's not, of course, about all Sufis, but one of them, when he heard about Imam Hussein being killed by Yazid, so he said they did something bad. And later he regretted why I talked about a worldly issue. So he didn't feel responsible to do anything. And even when he condemned just in one sentence, then he said, I shouldn't have said even that. This was something worldly. So for some people, politics is something worldly and dirty, so they should just keep away from it, no matter what is being done to people. But for the Shiites, not only divine justice is a principle of religion, but social justice, which is the echo of divine justice, is very important. So you see that in the Shiite jurisprudence, we have great emphasis on justice, which here is a kind of righteousness, because if you don't know Arabic adala and you want to use justice, there is understanding maybe, because in English now when we say justice, it's just a matter of punishing someone. But in Arabic, when we say adala, means like righteousness. So righteousness is very important condition for any social role. For the Shia, imam of the prayer has to be just. So anyone who commits a sin, even a personal sin, cannot be leading the prayer. Or for example, the witnesses, the judge, the leaders, the ayatollahs, all have to be just. They have to be righteous. So this is very important for us. A very important aspect of our faith is that you have to condemn injustice. Imam Ali alayhi salam, in his last will, just before his death, he said few things to his children and the people who hear this. And one of them was that when it comes to the oppressed people, you have to be help and support for them. And when it comes to oppressors, you have to stop them. So we cannot see injustice taking place and either be part of the injustice or just be indifferent. You have to be on the side of the oppressed people. So the tragedy of Karbala is a very important event in the whole history of the Shia, which is always inspiring us that we shouldn't keep silent in the face of injustice. No matter who is doing injustice and to whom injustice is exercised, you have to be always standing against injustice. And when it comes also to the doctrine of Al-Mahdi, which is the 12th Imam who is in the occultation and comes in the end of time, and he comes with Jesus, and they have the mission of filling the earth with social justice and equity. Top at his agenda is يَمْلَأُ اللَّهُ بِهِ الْأَرْضَ قِسْطًا وَعَدْلًا بَعْدَمَا مُلِئَتْ ظُلْمًا وَجَوْرًا. He comes for establishing universal justice. As you know, in the Quran, justice is something that you have to observe even with respect to your enemies. لا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا. Do not let hostility towards any people make you unjust. So justice has no exception, has no limit. And even ethicists, Muslim ethicists have developed this, that justice is a necessary value that admits no exception. So if you can have these three together, deep search for justice, but with a spirituality, so that you make sure that your intention is only pure and you don't have any interest in gaining anything selfish. And when I say selfish, I also include something that some people do in order to promote their own faith. It's true that sometimes you can do something to promote your faith and still you are doing selfish things. Because my faith, so I am promoting. Not because this is something that is pleasing God. So I would like to end this with a story that I many times share. And this story is very great lesson for me. So this is the end of my talk. Now we have a story about Abraham. And the more I study about Abraham and the more I reflect about Abraham, the greater the respect I have for this man. So, as you know, Abraham was chosen by God to be his friend, as Khalil. We have this in our traditions, Muslim Christians, that he was chosen as a friend by God. There is a hadith, there's a narration which says that Abraham, who had the habit of inviting guests because he was very hospitable, so when he had no guests, he used to go outside and find someone to invite him to share his meal. So one day, when he was going back home, he saw someone, a young man, in his house or just coming out of his house. So he was surprised because he used to close the door. So he said, بِإِذْنِ مَنْ دَخَلْتَ هَذِهِ الدَّارِ. With whose permission you entered this house? He didn't attack him or offend him, he just asked the question, who gave you permission? So that man said, بِإِذْنِ رَبِّ هَذِهِ الدَّارِ. With the permission of the Lord of this house. And Abraham didn't say, I am the Lord of this house. He realized that this is a person sent by God. It was a kind of angel who had come in the form of a human being. So the angel said, this is very important. Someone has been chosen by God as his friend, and I have come to inform him. Now imagine, you are Abraham, a messenger, and in that town, everyone either is misguided, or if it's guided, it's through you. And this person has come to your house, so you would automatically think that I must be that person who has been chosen by God as his friend. But Abraham didn't think like that. Abraham said, who is the one who is chosen by my God as his friend so that I serve him till I die? This is important. It was not important for him whether the friend of God
is a person that he knows or doesn't know, a person from his family or tribe or another person, man or woman, young or old. It's not important. Just, I want to know who is close to my Lord, who is friend of my Lord. I want to serve him. This is quite opposite to Satan, that even when God asked him to prostrate once before Adam, he refused. And Abraham volunteers to serve the friend of God till he dies. Then the angel said, it's actually you. And Abraham didn't say, yes, I could guess. No. He said, he said, why? Look at the humbleness of Abraham. He says, why? What God has found valuable in me? So, this is the sign of a true lover of God, that he is in a high position. He's a messenger. He's even chosen by God as his friend, but he doesn't think that he holds any privilege. And he's just there to serve anyone that is a friend of God. So I think this is a very important lesson for all of us, that we shouldn't think that God necessarily has chosen us as his servants or friends, or the friends of God have to be from my community, from my denomination, from my mazhab. No. Instead of making God serve our interest and make our choices, let God do his godly things and just be open to the choice that God makes and be available there to help, to support anyone who wants to have relation with God. I should be very happy if I see people from different religions, from different nations, in different languages praise God. This must make me happy. Not to say that, no, they are not important, their praise is not useful. Only my way of praying, only my way of praising God is accepted. This is quite, selfish. And this shows that we have not been able to rise to a level that we would be looking at the things which resembles the way God looks at the things. Thank you very much for your attention. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. Thank you.
What I did propose now is that we don't try and have the same body.